Jim will be starting it in very, very shortly.
Thanks. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. It's 5:07 in the morning here in the UK, where I am. My name is Jim Wynn, and I'm in a place called Dorking, which is just south of London in England. And I know it's 3:05 in the afternoon. I've just clicked the button on WebEx to start recording this, that we can at the end distribute this presentation, this webinar, through the WSID portal, and you'll all get information about that afterwards. This PowerPoint itself that I'm showing, the videos that I refer to, any PDFs, will all be put on the WSID portal. Now, a lot of the materials I'm using come from other people. I use the presentation leadership that John and our team gave a little while ago. I'm sort of being a little bit cheeky and saying, you know, let's look at all of this as Creative Commons. Now, Creative Commons is where we share things freely, but we attribute where the work came from. So in the spirit of creating a culture of ICT in schools, we want to stimulate a lot of sharing amongst us all. So at the end of this, please rip PowerPoint apart, use the bits which work for you. I always try to attribute work, and I'll mention the slides that were in that leadership seminar last year as we go through. The video is available for you to try to questions back to me, because you ask questions on the audio system. Unfortunately, we have so many people on the call today, you do get feedback. So it's easier if you just talk through the chat window. So I hope that all works. I'm actually quite impressed by how many people are already using the chat window and talking to me via that route. What I do today is to recap some of the issues which I presented at the launch last year, and then move on to some of my views about leadership is important with professional development. Then give you some choices about what methodologies and what work people have done in the past that might fit where you like to carry out leadership in your schools, and develop this whole concept that leadership is and professional development is a journey, and that journey can be really made much more interesting and much more effective with technology. And at the end, I want to talk about what the point of all of this is. And I'm going to just that it's really all about better learning and better productivity with technology. And if we can help ourselves and our teachers all be more productive, then that will create this culture of ICT, which will mean that ICT gets embedded in what we do, as seen as an on, which we see in many places. So just to repeat myself, all of the PowerPoints, videos and PDFs that I mentioned, the record of this webinar will be on the portal. But some of the documents I'm going to refer to, actually you can't download, you have to watch them online. So editing this presentation are a number of links. So to get a hold of the presentation afterwards, if there are some links that you're interested in, then click on to follow the documents that really turn you on and work for you. So I hope that's okay for everybody. Now, when we did launch, I put this slide up, which is a slide I used in my last headship in Bristol in England. And I remember trying deliberately to provoke my teachers by saying to them that I thought that their job should be really easy. The job of understanding the position of their students, knowing what the potential is, and your job as a teacher just to plot the path between their position and their potential, what all the job is. And of course, teachers recognize that, and they recognize the fact that their job isn't that easy. That easy on a PowerPoint slide, but getting the sort of atmosphere I hope I've captured on this picture from Vietnam, actually, where if you can get everybody enjoying learning, then people do learn more. There are 4 documents I want to draw your attention to. One from 2007 from McKinsey, which talks about what features of the best performing schools. Or this one from Don Hattie and Helen Timperley, which talks about feedback being a really important feature of successful schools. A new document from Michael Fullen around new pedagogies being developed because of technology, and one that we worked with ourselves with our good friend Professor Don Passy about planning a personal development journey. All documents are available on the WSID portal. If you don't read them, please go and skim them, because they say very important things about how to help our teachers, leadership, and them to get the best potential out of them. And after all, that's really what it's about. That's all about output, if you like, about what we want to do about the students. But what we forget is that we have people called teachers, and teachers are actually individuals in their own right as well. And often we treat all teachers in the same way. And if we applied the same thinking that we do for our students, we would teacher as a different learner as well. Our job as leaders is actually make sure we come up to the right standards and hit the quality marks for our particular country. And the best way to do that is to find those business phrases which people don't always like, but to find the bits in a teacher's job where we can improve their productivity so that the output can be as high as possible. Now, on the portal are some video clips which I'm not going to show today. We're a little bit worried about bandwidth issues. If you look at the video clip using technology to learn, it's a video clip from a particular school in the UK that talks about this issue, about helping teachers in their need towards being good users of technology to increase productivity and to enable the output, which is better learning for our students. And do you remember the slide that I showed? Really, all of us. In fact, do you remember I challenged everybody at the launch to say, what is your vision for what we want to achieve as leaders? This is my vision. Children skipping on their way to school, happy to go and learn, and a few years later becoming a captain of a ship or getting their prizes at the local university's science competition. It's our job in education, but of course the red arrows in between are where we earn our money. I'm here trying to attempt to bring together all the different aspects that we have to think about going forwards with technology. The most important thing that happens every day in every classroom on the planet is that the teacher has chosen a learning objective they want to impart with their learners. And in their mind, they have learning experiences that they like to plan, they like to teach in certain ways. If they're a teacher, they get feedback from their students, and they have a choice about the type of content and the type of technology that they'd like to bring together. So this is what a teacher does every day, and it's a complicated set of tasks that teachers have got to deal with. And if you don't understand what all the issues are underneath these different building blocks, then it's hard to really help a teacher with their workflow. Now, in any business, if we want to improve productivity, we have to think about how a person does their job. So to unpick this, a learning objective can be one of three different types, probably more actually. But if a learning objective is simply imparting a piece of knowledge, then the experience in the teaching modality will be different to if we want to impart a learning objective that's a skill. And if a learning objective that really demands understanding, we might decide to do something around a collaborative learning experience. A collaborative piece of technology helps that understanding learning experience, which may be a collaborative or an authentic learning experience, to take place. So this diagram, which is helping for us to unpack what it is doing, is crucial as helping us plan how we lead our teachers in using ICT in the right way. I just spend a few minutes just reminding ourselves of what the situation is in the world, and I did go over some of these slides when we launched WSID, actually in Paris, in UNESCO last week, at a conference around around the world, because remember 2015, which is the Millennium Development Goal year, next year about everyone being in primary education, and I don't know if you know, but around the world there are 57 million children at least not receiving a primary education, and even more not receiving a secondary education. And so this is an issue in the world. So I just want to share with you, what's going on, and not least the WSID plan from 2035. Real challenge, because if you think about where your country is today in terms of the shape of its economy and where Brunei wants to be by 2035, changing the nature of the economy through to a knowledge-based economy, recognizing that education has to change shape from a knowledge acquisition type education system through to a knowledge creation education system. If economy changes shape and education doesn't change, then you'd be producing children with the wrong skills who add to the number of children, young people who are out of work. So this challenge isn't just one of matching the needs of a plan, because if the economy changes shape and education doesn't, then we'll have a real big problem with the output of our citizens. So the pressure is really on for education to change, and that only happens if we get our leadership right. In the world, there are probably 358 million young people who are not in employment, education or training. The phrase that's known as a NEET, not in employment, education or training, in 2010. That number is increasing around the world. And so they're not even going to school, but even when they leave school, they're not getting jobs and they're not continuing their training. So one of the things that we have to do to move towards Education 3.0 is our young people become lifelong learners, people who want to continue learning and don't fall into this trap of not continuing their education so that they can become employable. And if the situation like that is getting better, look at this chart here, which shows in the blue bars the proportion of people in countries around the world who are out of work, young people back in 2007, and the grey arrows in May last year are out of work. What's 6 years later, isn't it? And there's only one or two countries, Germany, Israel, Turkey, the number of people, the proportion of people has got better, but everywhere else, look, the proportion of young people is getting higher. So it's doing very well. Now, again, can you see as I'm going through these slides here, here's a link here to this particular piece of research. If you're interested in that, download the presentation afterwards and you can click on that link and get this actual piece of research for you to look at yourself. This piece of work from the World Economic Forum, again, here's the link to the presentation, say that the key to the number of people, the proportion of people out of work is related directly to the education that young person got. In 25 out of 27 developing countries, base unemployment rate was amongst people with primary education or less. So this is the point. You need to make sure our young people stick in education for as they can, because it's directly related to their employability prospects. I remember I showed this back at the launch or not, but this is an amazing statistic from the last round of PISA, and this particular PDF is on the portal. But if the USA brought all of their students up to the minimum OED proficiency level, which happens to be 400 points, they would be more employable than they were before, and that employability would add $72 trillion to the economy by the year 2020. Which is quite a hard thing to do. I'm going to explain a bit more about that in one more slide. But if they increase the score in PISA by the same amount that Mexico did, it would add $41 trillion to the US economy. And if they managed to do this as Finland did, they'd add $103 trillion. Now, I'm going to unpack that a little bit more in a moment, so you can understand where these figures come from. But again, the PDF is in the portal. So what you can see that this bar in the middle, it's a little bit tiny, but you'll see why in a moment. But people about PISA are in the rankings of different countries against each other and who's above average and who's below average. But here's this bar of the WSID average from the last Program International Student Assessment, PISA. That is on the portal. I'm going to get like a crack record, aren't I? This red bar is the important line. Low bar level 1 and level 0. So in the tests of PISA, exams are placed at different levels. A level 1 question is testing whether you know things. 2 question is simple application of your knowledge. 3, an easy problem-solving question, through to level 6, which is a complex problem-solving task. So the questions are organized. What the EDs say is that if you score below level 2, you score level 1 or you don't score anything, level 0, then you're probably unemployable or in a job which requires no skills. So you think about this, that people below level 1 tend to have a life with doing menial, low-skilled tasks in a particular economy. Above the line, level 2 and above, you become economically active in your country. Now, let's think about complex problem solving. Look at the portion of people as an average of the whole. So this is about 1%, I think, if I remember the figures. Now, if the design plan is about changing over to a knowledge economy, we're going to have a higher proportion than this average. So schools can supply citizens who are able to take part in a society which has got less non-skilled work and more skilled work. So let's just have a look at the whole of the country which took the last PISA test. And you can see on the left-hand side here, Shanghai has got a huge proportion of children who scored at level 6. Now, you heard a lot of press saying, I must just be spoon-feeding children to get them to regurgitate facts so they can do well at PISA. Those don't understand PISA, because if you want to get level 6, you've got to be able to apply your knowledge in a problem-solving context. More to just have a look at Finland compared to the United States. Can you see here the proportion of children who scored level 6 in Finland, or children who scored level 6 in the USA? It's different. There are more in Finland, but it's a pretty similar figure. But the USA are way down the league table compared to Finland, because they've got a much higher proportion of children who scored below level 2. And yet the state's economy is actually much bigger. Well, it's a bigger country now, but it's actually the GDP per head is much bigger than Finland. And as the match, the profile of the children scoring difference match actually pretty well what the US economy needs. So what we need to do with Wawasan going forward is keep a close eye on how are performing against these different levels. And what we're doing is we are preparing a test in conjunction with the people at the OECD that you ought to use in your schools to test where your children are compared to this particular range scores going forward. I spoke to Michael Davidson who runs PISA at the OECD the other night, and he's really keen to help with this, and we hope to get him out into Brunei at some point to help us take this forward. Okay, that was the recap on where we were from the launch, and in other words, why are we doing this? We've got to look at the link between leadership and professional development, and what I think are critical issues in terms of creating a culture that embraces ICT. Remember this idea that we've been working on with Professor Don Passy, but the first step in leading our teachers in our schools and leading ourselves, if you like, is to know ourselves and to know our teachers, know what current practice is. Suggesting 3 stages in a teacher's professional development journey, where the left-hand side represents a teacher, maybe a novice teacher, a teacher who's beginning their trade, learning how to be a teacher, who really stands at the front of the class and they tell students things, and they transfer knowledge to their learners. Now, in this paradigm, you can be a bad knowledge transfer teacher or a good one. In other words, there's a learning curve, and you can see from the graphic here that this teacher is bringing out a student to the front of class and starting to get used to being a teacher that starts to share knowledge and works with the students. Of course, when you work in this fashion, One thing is the level of student achievement is probably limited. If you're only teaching modality, and it's not a teaching modality, you might start every class off and finish every class in that modality, but unless you can adopt the modalities, you're probably limiting the achievement of your students. The second modality is what we're calling the knowledge sharing modality. If you walked into one of your classrooms in school and you opened the door randomly on one of your teachers, would you see them at the front of the class talking, or would you see them in the middle of the class work students? They may still be in charge of the direction that the is going. They're still, that the learning objective is being met with the students, and they're getting the students to share their knowledge. And again, we're asserting that even this learning curve, you can have good and bad knowledge sharing teachers. The achievement is still limited. And the hardest, the most difficult professional development stage for a teacher to reach is when they let go, enable the students to do their own learning journey, and become a real facilitator in the classroom. Different modalities aren't better than one another. They're simply more difficult and require more experience to impart. You become a really high-level professional, you will mix and match these three modalities for any particular learning objective. What is that as school leaders, or as leaders of your own professional development, you need to recognize where you are on these journeys and what your ability is to use these different modalities in teaching. And technology can enable these different modalities to take place. Papert at MIT, and again here's a link to his work leading and learning. Often if you walk into an operating theatre from 100 years ago and compare it to operating theatre from today, the difference is absolutely huge. And he puts his tongue in his cheek and he says, if you walk into an operating theatre from a classroom from 100 years ago and one today, you know the difference. And he blames teachers for not professionally developing themselves for this. But there are lots of classrooms which look different today. This is a one from a few years ago. You can see from the Apple Mac in it. But the thing is that there are a lot of classrooms which still look like and still have the teacher in knowledge transfer mode, the front teaching their class. I think Papert is being really unfair because, the light in this theatre, operating theatre, isn't as good as the light here, and the scalpel probably isn't as sharp. The technology has got really obvious benefits for these in this picture compared to the bottom one. And if you did move surgeon from this operating theatre, if you could magically transport him 100 years forward, I think he'd really love working in this operating theatre because he would, the art's still in the same place, he's still cutting in the same place. The teacher here, I think, would be completely out of sorts with this learning environment because he'd expect to be the sage on the stage and he wouldn't know how to work in knowledge sharing mode. So I actually think what we're asking teachers to do is really tough. It's that we're asking them to behave entirely differently. But the thing is important in these two pictures from medicine, this is called an operating theatre, is that other surgeons are watching this guy work and they're learning from his technique. Fortunately, we don't do that as often as we should in teaching. So in developing a culture of ICT, we really need to steal something from the medical profession and really get our teachers to learn from each other and share their good and their bad practice, which is what the medical profession have been doing for a long time. So that's the one place Seymour Papert is right, that professional development isn't as good as it could be because we don't learn from each other as much as we should. This is a crucial element in building the culture of ICT. So here we are in the Whole School ICT Development WSID project with elements of leadership and teachers and curriculum, but the important thing is this culture. And if Brunei can get this right, Brunei will be unique in the world. And I'll tell you, you're all going to be leaving Brunei talking about around the world because nobody else is managing to get that culture really embedded across the system. Before anybody picks me up, there are wonderful schools around the world who've done this, But what I don't ever see in my travels, and I've been to over 50 countries now and been in schools in 50 countries, I see that embedded nature of the culture being, there. And so if we can achieve that, we really will be world class. In the WSID overview, I've seen the definition of all the different types of leadership that's been prepared, and I think you've got wall charts which take the different strands and the different focus areas of 21st century teaching and so on. And today we're talking about the focus area of leadership ICT capacity, but different ways of thinking and working and using tools are important that we focus, and we need to focus on what makes a difference, and what suggests is what's going to make a difference. These 4 areas of working. Look at the different focus areas. The thing that's going to make the difference is this whole area of knowledge construction. So capacity as a leader is to help our staff move away from knowledge transfer, knowledge acquisition, to construction, and that way I'm absolutely convinced that one area will lead to the culture of ICT. But this knowledge construction, you see from the wall chart that you've all got, that's suggesting that you need to understand it, deeper conceptual understanding of the knowledge that you want to construct. You need to not just know it, you need to be able to solve problems, be able to apply that knowledge. Undoubtedly mean that you have to be innovative, and crucially, you need to be able to apply that knowledge in authentic settings. Now, this is a challenge quite often to some teachers who've never worked in industry or in business. They need to take their theoretical understanding of a subject and apply it in real-world authentic settings, and demand an understanding of a piece of knowledge across different disciplines. The link, which is, again, if I'm just going to go backwards for a moment on the framework, you can see here I've highlighted that very set of points on the leadership ICT capacity against the ways of thinking knowledge construction. This is a real challenge to us and we know how to help teachers do that subject. So that's what I'm going to try and unpack now in Journey. Now, I presented this Stolen Think work from 1996 to help you understand where teachers are. It's a 2x2 grid which says your teachers are clearly effective or ineffective, either improving or declining. And that will tell you whether they're moving ahead in their profession or just cruising or strolling or whatever. By the way, I found the PDF for this, and it is again on the portal. And it starts to expand here some words so that you can read these words and say, well, I've got a teacher in my school and they were effective, but they're not really improving themselves anymore, so they're beginning to cruise a bit. So understanding where a teacher is on their journey is so important to be able to introduce them to some of the concepts on that framework that we had before. So like this model or not like this model. So I'm just going to expose you now to a few other similar models. What I'd like you to do after this is to maybe look at these different models and choose the one that's going to work well for you. So one model is it's 10 years earlier than the one that was shared last year, the Dreyfus and Dreyfus model from 1986. And again, what I found was a free Google book which you can run online about this work. But Dreyfus and Dreyfus talk about teachers as a journey from novice to expert. And as a person starts their profession, they need more and more rule-governed behavior. So when you're a novice, you're asking everybody about everything that you do. And when you're expert, you really don't need to ask anybody anymore. And when in this journey, teacher on the journey, it's actually important for that person to know where they are on the journey. Am I a novice? That's fine. It's a bad thing. It's just that's where I are. So if I'm a knowledge transfer teacher, I need help to move to be a knowledge teacher, and it's not you're a bad teacher because you only teach from the front. That I used to work for Promethean, and Promethean active whiteboards, and a lot of the people say it's really terrible when teachers stand at the front and use an interactive whiteboard. That's a real waste of money. In fact, it's not. Just using that whiteboard in that modality is because that's where a teacher is in their journey. However, if a teacher stays there for the rest of their life, that is bad, and we need to help them move into a different type of teacher moving forward. I'm just looking at the text now to see if there's any questions coming in. And David's saying, yep, if you can see the text window, post some questions in that, and we'll make sure that the questions are answered, if not during the webinar, but after the webinar as well. We can come back to you at another time. Work again in terms of how we move people forward. It definitely isn't new. I mean, this work in 1962. We're talking about 50 years ago. But this graph is really important at understanding your staff, because what this graph says is that 2.5% of any population are providers, and then another 13 and a bit percent will be the next people to adopt, and they're called the early adopters, and we reach 50% of people by including the early majority. People do take up innovation in different ways. You know, at the beginning, we need to help our teachers individually like we help our learners. But this chart is really saying that if of 100 learners, you could expect 2.5% of them to be at the cutting edge, pushing the teachers, and 100 teachers, it's the same as well. But that was again presented in, from the Global Soft team last year, says that these 2.5% are really the experimenters. They're the people really pushing out things which people think they're a bit mad at the work that they're doing. But often leads to pilot projects being established by governments, say, before the early majority take up that work, and it becomes popularized and gets fed into the rest of the population. I will take this on this, but when things become popular, that politicians think it's a good idea to actually say, oh, we better start doing this. But they then start to spoil things by regulating what goes on, and it becomes mainstream. The reason why these two charts are really important is it helps you understand that when you think you're moving slowly, that's fine, because this experimental stage, and this is where we are, and you get this experimental stage right with the WSID project so that it can become popular, and the adoption rate really does improve as you go forward. Lots of people, a research group, also talk about the adoption of technology as a thing in its own right. Different types of technology get adopted at different rates. And this hype cycle, as Gartner call it, has got 5 bits to it. Now, people get really excited about different types of technology, and they call that the innovation trigger. But without putting too fine a point to it, they tend to lie about what the technology will deliver, and Gartner called that the peak of inflated expectations. Then get disillusions, so they call the next phase the trough of disillusionment. Last phase, called the plateau of productivity, when we really work out how to use a particular technology. And the step between the trough and the plateau is called the slope of enlightenment. So you've all heard about MOOCs. So this was from, I think, July, that's right, July last year. And MOOC, this massive online curriculum, this is still really at the peak of inflated expectation. And can you see it's coloured in light blue? That's because Gartner, it's going to take 2 to 5 years before there's the plateau of enlightenment. So when you're looking at different technologies and people are saying you need to use this, you need to use that, have a look at this Gartner work. Again, there's a link to the work here. You can't download it, you have to pay for the PDFs, but you can go and look at the work online. And help you make your decision about which technology you'd like to fit into your circumstance. Anyway, it's good when people tell you that a technology is great. You can look at the Gartner work and see what they think anyway about the adoption. Now, this is adoption in education, by the way. This isn't just adoption. They have different curves for adoption in different industries. Favorite, Hooper and Reber, before the Stoll work. Hooper and Reber said there are 5 distinct stages. Familiarize yourself with technology, integrate it, and then this stage, this is a thing that we all do. We all have an aha moment before we reorientate and evolve. The stages are just focused still on teaching, because using technology to actually do what we did before. The whiteboard example. After the aha moment, Hooper and Reber argue that want to refocus on learning. That's amazing that if we can get our teachers to go through some stages which help them move from a knowledge transfer teacher to a knowledge sharing one, we will really transform schools. Now, I was introduced to this by Professor Ian Gibson from Macquarie University in Australia. And Ian rewrote these stages into these. So these are Ian's rewriting of who. I think that's what most researchers do, isn't it? They take somebody else's research and write a different way. Ian says the stages are: understand the technology itself, use it anywhere you can, integrate your curriculum, how you're enhancing what you teach, in other words, teaching better, then extend what you teach, and that's when the aha moment comes to reorientate, evolve, and transform. And is a real stickler. So Professor Gibson, he has people using the word transform right at the very beginning because he thinks it scares people. Rudd in 1996 said almost the same, and he said, if about people at the beginning, they're really nervous and fearful about what's going on, and when they put the effort in, they get really, and you'll have heard people say, oh, it takes me too long to do this, I'm really frustrated. That's part of the process. If you can push people through this really important frustration phase, they become relaxed and they use less rules. That's the Dreyfus stuff. They talk to other people in the community, and they start to use it in a transparent way. The most important thing from Russell is that he says very clearly, if people understand where they are, it helps them move through the stages. So as a leader, can you see the cultural thing here? The blame game when people are getting it wrong, it's actually helping people know that's just where they are on their journey. And I've put the link here to the free PDF about the Russell work. Next one, I had from a book by Michael Fullen, who was referring to this book by Rosenholz. And I think this really is the final cultural slide. That if, according to Rosenholz, you share the same goals within your school, the really important things that you get from teachers are teacher commitment, because they're more certain about the way things are going in the future. They'll admit what they don't know and become better learners as teachers, and they'll start collaborating with each other. Remember that sharing bit I was talking about? All some shared goals, and that leads to student learning. You can get a free book by Rosenholz on Google. The book, he still sells his stuff, so you might want to buy what he produced. I think it's fantastic. He talks about creating a culture of change in this link here. I just read about Michael Fullen at that link. Usually happens in schools, of course, and there's a couple of videos on the portal I'd like you to look at. Just explore the videos to see what's there. Because usually happens in schools is your computer's in a room and we just let them get on with it. So you can see quite an old cartoon, so it's not an old thing that people have done. So learning better productivity. Lots of examples to help our teachers understand why we're doing different things. So do you remember this picture I showed at the launch? That isn't me. I've got grey hair. This teacher hasn't even got a ruler in his classroom to draw a straight line on his blackboard. It would be nice just to provide him with a ruler. That would make him more productive. This middle I got from a physics teacher who was trying to teach children about bending of light through a prism, and he just couldn't make it work in practice. And there's a wonderful link here to a piece of flash animation, which in some ways is much better than the physical experiment itself, because it's just so hard to do. So this one here is about solving this guy's problems to make him more productive. This link here is about solving an inefficiency as the prism doesn't work. This PowerPoint was on the portal. A teacher of history who used PowerPoint to put pictures from the Second World War into the right chronological order. And the teacher that used to do that used to print lots of pictures off and have the children pictures on a washing line across the classroom and talk about how to, this event before that event or that event after that event. It was just really hard to do in class. But with PowerPoint, each group of children can do that. And again, it just made the work really more efficient. And a teacher who was teaching about eclipses find it really hard. Can you imagine drawing an eclipse on a blackboard? This animation, and the actual animation I downloaded and put on the portal, it's much clearer to children to watch the animation. And did you listen? No? Okay, so fine. Now I really want you to find this clip here called camera. I think it's called camera. This teacher here was asked to teach in the knowledge sharing mode. So he designed a lesson. The children were put groups, and children would interview each other, and a third child would use a video camera to video the conversation. I run this clip twice when I talk to teachers, and I ask them if it's really good, and they always say it's really good, because as the clip runs, you can see the teacher here saying, oh, look at your camera angle, are they talking right? And this child and the other two are getting a wonderful knowledge-sharing experience. I then clip a second time and I say, look in the background. And this young chap here, he has his hand in his pocket. What you can't see, his arm is going from side to side because he actually is doing absolutely nothing in the class. There is this one, or this one. This one group is getting a really good collaborative learning experience. The rest of the class aren't. Teacher here hasn't learned what these are to make the whole class work efficiently. So that one clip is really, really worth watching. If you framework for all of this, there's a group in America called Cozen, who they have a course that you can take online and get a professional qualification. It's quite expensive, but I just draw your attention to it because some of you will want to get a professional worldwide global qualification. So again, the link is to it there. But all these different things we're talking about, from leadership and vision through to team building, are part of the Cozen framework. And after this webinar, which is quickly running out of time, you want to do a lot more of your own research. So I really say that that's a really good place to go. Anecdote. A teacher that I met once used to have this lesson where she'd bring in potatoes that she'd bake in the oven overnight, and used to get the children in groups of 3 or 4 to put a thermometer into the potato to get a stopwatch, and one would look at the thermometer, the other one would look at the stopwatch, the other one would plot the graph. One child would say now, because a minute had passed, and the other would say 93 degrees, and the other child would plot the on a graph. And she was on a course like WSID. They said, no, you don't want to do it like that anymore. Access instruments 83 and get a sensor and plug in, and you can do it on a computer. Now this teacher was really angry, and she actually put me on the chest and said, my lesson was really bad after that, because you know what happened? After the first 5 minutes, the children were bored and they started getting naughty and they didn't have anything to do. And my training course was all about the equipment and the skills that the students needed and the skills that I needed. It didn't tell me anything about what would happen to the class dynamics and what was going on and what the objectives was going on. So the course focused on technology. It didn't focus on all of the skills that the teacher needed to have a better learning experience. And we really need to take notice of that example. It's so important. How do teachers start their work? Well, if you look at what teachers actually do in class, different things like enrichment, problem solving, role play. So when teachers think about where to use ICT, have to think about different types of teaching modality. Because this is my favorite. Drill practice. I used to teach maths, as you know. Drill practice is boring, but you can bring it to life with a piece of ICT. So have a look at the curriculum and see which of your curriculum, and you're really leading now and helping them think about more just not using ICT anywhere, but I'm going to look at all those boring bits of the curriculum and I'm going to use ICT there. Just one, a lot of still use ICT to teach about ICT. What I'm about here is using IT within curriculum to teach the curriculum itself. Where we're using technology just transparently, you don't even notice the technology there, so you need to know Are you teaching about ICT, or are you teaching with it, or are you teaching through it? The equation is to help teachers prepare better lessons. This amounts to the learning objective, the knowledge, the task you want the children to carry out, the stimulus in the task, the characteristics. We know this work. It's what teachers do every day. But we have to help teachers know where to use ICT in the building of lessons. So in summary, know where teachers are on their learning journey. Know as a teacher in terms of how innovative or adopt lessons, or you're part of the early. Where are you on this adoption curve? Then, what change management? Are you looking to solve the inefficiency part of teaching, looking at the teaching model, or are you trying to improve how your teachers teach? What are inefficiency? The eclipse, or the history, or the prism, or whatever. What I mean by teaching model, is it drill actors? Is it enrichment? Is it simulation? Is it about technology, or is it with it or through it? Or trying to improve a lesson. I quickly went over there. What the teacher was teaching with the potato, I'd call it an 9 out of 10 lesson. It was a great lesson already, so don't change it. I identify the lessons that are maybe a 7 out of 10 lesson that need improving. Use your management of change strategy. My favorite is Hooper and Reaver, with its different stages in it. And if you get them right, teachers will be able to prepare a much better lesson, which will lead to student achievement. So that's very quick, because it's probably a year-long course in 45 minutes. But I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to unmute everybody if I can remember how to do it. We're probably going to get feedback, but now's a few minutes for anybody on the call to ask questions. But don't want to ask questions now. They'll do so after the webinar. So we've got now about 8 minutes of time for any questions. So the floor is now open. There's the feedback. If I can see that, yeah, thank you, with yourself. Arif, in school, do you think you'll be able to use any of those models to help with the culture of change? To technical note, the reason why we get feedback is then when people are using their computer, and I can see that Arif and a number of others are, computers aren't very good at minimizing the output feedback. And when we've got more than one person on the line, that's why it happens. So, Mark, I can see some noise coming from your station. Comments to make, Mark? Murray, maybe?
Jim, as you know, a really solid presentation, pretty full-focusing. I yours on the chain, it links well with even in schools are going through. Nothing in particular?
I think it's important, you know, that lots of bits of research and around the world, but if you saw those different methods for this blue bar, all really similar, but they're different tools that need different ones. So I hope when people download this presentation, they can look at the 4 or 5 different management models that I've presented and choose one that really will make the difference in your school. Bart, you.
Yes, it's me. I have a question here.
Can you say who you are for the benefit of everyone else on the call, please?
I'm Walid from Brunei. I have one question here. Sir Ken Robinson once said, we teachers are in transition phase between the 20th century teaching and towards the 21st century teaching. I asked few teachers about teaching with technology. They felt that it is very unnatural for them to use technology in the classroom, be it for teaching, technology for knowledge transfer, or creative teachings and the learning too. So, is there a way for teachers in Brunei to feel very safe and very confident in using technology for knowledge and especially for going towards for community, knowledge community.
That's a fantastic question. Quite often people feel, especially in projects like this, that they have to use technology for every waking minute of their life. And the trick is, if you put the potato example, I'm going to call that potato lesson a 10 out of 10 lesson, because a great lesson before. The children were working together. They were learning how to read a thermometer. They were learning how to plot a graph. The learning objective, by the way, was twofold. One, to get the children working in teams. That was a learning objective. But the learning objective was to learn that when a graph goes down, that means something's getting colder. If it goes up, something's getting hotter. And the teacher was achieving the learning objectives using the method that she had. And when technology was applied, the lesson got worse because they weren't working in teams anymore. They had nothing to do. And this is really important. So I've gone back to this pyramid, because when you're looking at the knowledge that you want to impart, it isn't about always using technology when you're choosing what I call the learning and teaching assessment accessories. Using right technology to make that lesson, that learning objective go as well as possible. I would say the most important thing you can do is to look at the whole curriculum and work out which are the 7 out of 10 lessons, which are lessons which teachers need to improve, and look out. The answer to that question could be oil refinery. That's the best way to improve that lesson. So it's a matter of being open. It isn't about technology every lesson. It's about where technology can make the difference. That culture of choosing the right learning and teaching, that's why this is in red in this bar. This trick, and I know that teachers get really scared that, oh goodness, I've got to use it all the time. So it's learning objective by learning objectives is the only answer to that question. And that's what I tried to show in those examples here, this one here. So what thinking is, what type of learning are your teachers using for a learning objective? Is it in practice? Is it enrichment? Is it modeling? Some of those modalities are better suited to technology than others. Because I used to teach math, kids get bored out of minds doing 40 questions. They have to do practice. Learning a foreign language, you have to do your vocabulary. There are little pieces of technology that can make your vocabulary fun. I saw a dance mat being used. Children, when they saw a word coming up in German, they dance to a different square. Have you seen these dance mats? They're the size of a carpet, and you plug them into the USB port, and they can dance between the different squares to learn their vocabulary. You've just brought something that's boring to life. So, do this of where the need is required. The most important thing I can say.
Thank you.
That's why, if I just go back to my other slide, this one, I'll give you some ideas about here's different circumstances where different types of technology help solve different problems. You know, here it's about chronology. Hard to get the paper in order. Here, experiment is hard to do in a physics lesson. Eclipse is a 3D issue, which you can't draw on a board very easily, but an animation can bring it to life. But I try to work out what the issue is, the learning objective, and get people to talk. You know, have all your staff say, God, you know, I was taught a lesson that wasn't as good as I'm being able to teach. In fact, how much time have I got? Can I go, if you're this, I want to go to this and show you one, what I think is an interesting slide anyway. I want to show this, but I'm going over time, so people have got to drop off, that's fine, but I just wanted to do one other thing with you. Teachers, maths departments in a school, and the teachers have got a class each. End of year test, there were 10 questions, one question on each part of the syllabus, okay? Average score out of 20 that each teacher got was 8. Principal, as the leader, you're really happy at the moment because every teacher got an average score of 18. If you like data, you're going to look at the average score for each question. And the average score for each question, can you see? is 18, 17, 19. Something must be good for school, mustn't it? Well, let's have a teacher 4. Teacher 4's scores for the 10 questions. Yeah, they dipped down a bit on question 6. Can you see? Got an average score of 15 for his class. Did well. Yeah. Teacher 3 is pretty cool. Their class got 20 out of 20 on 3 questions here. Teacher 2. Oh no, 3. Let's go back. We just nearly missed that. Look, got 11 out of 20 for question 10, and to help them. Oh, until 1 did really well for every question, but teacher 1 on question 2 scored 9. Now, teacher 1 needs some help with question 2, don't they? Now, why talk to one of the other teachers? Hey, look, teacher 3 got 2 for question 2, so they could maybe help teacher 1 be a teacher. Look, teacher 1 did 19 out of for question 10, but let's get teacher 1 and 3 together, working with each other, and work with each other on improving question 2 and question 10. This is a culture of change because you need them to allow you to analyze the data and share good and bad practice with each other in this culture. Now, that's the way forward to create a culture of ICT. It isn't about the technology. It's about sharing what you're good at and what you're good at, and might or might not use technology along the way. It's an analysis, isn't it? Because if you just did it at this level, your school is wonderful. But in fact, one of your teachers children. I'm going to that point, and we're going to wrap up. We're going to hand over to David and Baldev to leave the final remarks before we close the webinar and publish it later. But I'd love to hear some comments back now about whether you think this format works and how we do this in the future. Baldev and David, would you like to close the webinar?
Jim, it's David here. Just one question that's come through to me from one of the participants was help our teachers in the schools. Are there any particular combination of leadership styles you would suggest to use, or is that too big a question, I guess?
You can't actually answer that question until you answer this question. These 2 questions. Where are your teachers on their development stages? And teachers in terms of being innovators or early adopters? And let know your teachers, which is why the work that Shirley is doing is social and it's unique, by the way, that once you know, isn't it the same as the first slide I put up? If you know the position of your learners and you know their potential, you can plot the path. How do you depend on?
Thank you. And I was just saying, if anybody has any further questions from today, then please send them to us directly, or put them on the forum on the portal. Of course, there's the form there to use as well. There will be 3 more webinars happening in the coming weeks onto the 3 other focus areas of the WSID project. So forward to those ones, and please spread the word of your other staff and teachers about those. Really want to say a big thank you to Jim. What Jim has done today, we see the 1-hour presentation webinar. There's an awful lot of work has gone into preparation for this, and Jim's extremely busy man, so we really do appreciate his time and the work he's put in. And love to see some of the comments coming through on the chat, like that from Lead, and just saying what an awesome session and so on. So that's really impressive. And as I said, the recording for this, plus all the resources, the PDFs and the videos that Jim has created for this session, will be available on the WSID portal very shortly.
Some of them are links, like on the slide people are looking at now. You can't download some stuff because it's a web page, so they need to be able to just click or copy those links and follow them themselves.
So Jim, thank you ever so much, Jim. It's really been quite inspiring for everybody, I think, and really thought-provoking. And I think there's a lot that we could all learn in our roles in whether in schools or whether we're in different positions. So thank you very much indeed, Jim.
No, I enjoyed it. It's the time went by flash. It's a thing to do when you're not getting questions and you can't see the whites of people's eyes, but I hope it helps.
Thank you very much, everybody, and do appreciate attendance, and do hope it's been useful, and do pass the wheel on to the rest of the teams in schools and departments.
And would you like the final word?
Yeah, Jim, can I just sort of really add on to what David just said? So I think this is the first in terms of the WSID and sort of just starting to see how technology can help support what the project is all about and how and link with all the stakeholders. So can I thank you for really giving us the presentation, but also, touching at a practical level, what does this mean for the project, and how can we support schools we are working with and the wider schools in Brunei. I also want to thank, the presentation was, we're going to share this with schools so that they can actually view this recording with their staff, because I think this is going to be super in terms of some of the work we are doing in schools today as we go into the schools and support them. So this is really going to complement the work we are doing in schools. So thank you for really taking a lot of time to also share the research with us and the links with us. I think that, I think they're going to be extremely useful as we do this knowledge transfer process with the schools. So thank you for the time, and I think and I'm sure everyone would has benefited a lot from that. And I also thank all people who've been and thank you for your participation. But thank you, this has been great.
I might just for the last comment from myself, from David here, I think, but if to my knowledge, this is the first international webinar we've had for Brunei Schools. So one to all those who joined, who've been pioneers, and Jim's model there, we're looking at the innovators and early adopters, I think, in terms of sharing international experience from in this format. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you again on the next this webinar.
Make sure, David, that it's not my model. I stole it, and this it's all the way back to 1962. This model actually, and
there you go.
That's sort of the sharing process that we need to have. So yeah,
exactly. So thank you very much, everybody, and do appreciate your time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Just a moment.